Because Nomi, would you agree this house of cards is on the verge of coming down anyway?
Oh, it's not a matter of if, but when we've seen this, we've seen this movie, we see the crash. And if that moment is when you need to take out your funds to live that part of your life, yeah, that will be very, very problematic. And so you do need to be prepared.
Hello, I'm Kim Kiyosaki, and welcome to another episode of Rich Dad World. Just want to thank you for tuning in because, as we always say, financial education is the most important thing you can focus on today, given this world and this economy and all the craziness that's going on. The more educated we get and the more experience and knowledge we have, the better off we're going to be prepared for whatever happens in this world. So today we have, along with Robert and myself, two very, very special guests. We have Andy Tanner, who's a Rich Dad advisor on paper assets, being stocks, bonds, mutual funds. But Andy's expertise and why he's a Rich Dad advisor, he's not just a paper expert and a real teacher, not a fake teacher, a real teacher who practices what he preaches. But Andy is an expert on how to get cash flow from paper assets, something that we all love. Since I'm the queen of cash flow, why not? So that's our one guest. Our second guest, Nomi Prins, is an expert and also a real teacher, hands-on in the global economy and specifically central banks, the Federal Reserve, which is one of Robert's favorite subjects. So we have a ton to talk about today. What's going on globally, what's going on locally, and most importantly, what that means to you and how you can prepare for what's coming. So Robert, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, one of the best things about doing these calls is I get to be a student because I love learning. And anybody who says they know everything is probably a school teacher. I'm always excited about learning about money because they don't teach that at school. So Andy Tanner is my go-to guy, not just on how to make cash flow from paper assets, but everybody knows stock markets go up and all markets go up and down. Gold goes up and down. And Andy is really what we would call a technical trader. He understands the charts. He looks at the charts. You can see trends and things like this. So every time there's a trend going on in the marketplace, I just call Andy. I don't have to sit there and look at those charts because I was always a C and F student. I never understood that stuff. And then I'm very happy to have Nomi Prins because she is also a real teacher. She traveled the world checking out the central banks. So Nomi is my go-to person when I have a question on ¿Qué pasa? What is happening, not only in the Fed, but in the central banking system. So I'll repeat it again. The reason I love working with Rich Dad's World, and this is because I'm a student. Anybody says they know all the answers, they must be a school teacher. Because only in school does a teacher have the answers. Every time I study something, I just find out how much I don't know. So anyway, welcome to the program, Andy and Nomi. And Andy, let's have Nomi first. Nomi, could you explain how you started, but why did you travel the world looking at these operations called central banks?
Yeah, and thanks again, Robert and Kim, for having me on. Andy, I look forward to hearing from you because you're their advisor, and that means a lot. Because if you're not learning, you're going backwards, and nobody likes that. And that's kind of my way of backing into the answer to that question, Robert, because I always believed. From really being a young child, but certainly in the beginning of my career on Wall Street and internationally in London and running teams and everything else, that if you're not on the ground, if you're not having conversations with the entities that are actually creating the money, as it turned out with central banks, and that's obviously evolved over all of those decades, over the years since. But also, if you're not seeing what's happening in the world as a result of what they are doing and who they are doing it with, you're missing something. You can read all you want about anything, but I find that unless you're out there watching it, experiencing it, communicating about it, you're missing like that key component of actually understanding what is going on. And so even when I was on Wall Street, I was working at Lehman Brothers when I first went out to Asia. Was my first sort of major trip to central banks. I'll cut it all summarizingly short, but basically I got the opportunity to talk to central banks as they were just kind of starting to buy US treasuries, buy more, decide what they wanted to do. All that relationship was just kind of evolving with the United States, with the Fed, and really so behind the radar screen. And so that gave me just a front seat at the beginning of what we now see has been a massive shift in the power that central banks around the world, particularly the Fed, the European Central Bank, Bank of Japan, and so forth, have over the markets with respect to the banking system, and therefore related to the full economy and also to individuals, to all the people out there that don't have, a Fed watching their back, that can't create money out of the air and actually have to rely on their wits and experience and their hard work, and also, though, are still impacted by it.
And what was Collusion about? It's a great book, but boy, I tell you, it destroyed brain cells reading it.
So Collusion stemmed out of a lot of that experience. I started writing it 7 years after the financial crisis hit in 2008. So it's 2015. I'd actually been at the Federal Reserve. I was talking to the World Bank and the Fed and all the members there, and they were wondering. They literally had me there. I think just as a critic, they could check the box and say, "See, we also listen to other people." But whatever the case, I was talking to a group of them, and the question that they asked me was, "Why is what we are doing helping Wall Street and not Main Street?" Which is like, yeah, duh. And I said to them point blank, Janet Yellen, had been there talking right before me and everything else, a former Fed chief. They're not helping because you're not making them, because you're just literally giving them all of this money with no restrictions, without having to work for it. In fact, having screwed up in order to get it. So what would you expect? Sorry to say they did not necessarily listen. They might have checked the box, but regardless, a few years later, as we headed into the pandemic, the central bank basically started going on steroids. After I had explained all of this in Collusion, not just what the Fed was doing between the financial crisis of 2008 up through 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, the book came out and was edited again in 2019. So all of that period. But it was global. What the Fed was doing was global. They created over $24 trillion worth of basically fake money out of nowhere. And they said it was to help the real economy as well. At the end of 2019, the real economy was slugging along, basically barely alive. The markets were super zooming, which is great for the people invested in the markets, but not great for anyone who wasn't. And all of these central banks were taking a victory lap. And then come the pandemic and we all see that, the facade is really still the facade, but then they doubled down on everything that I talked about in Collusion. So now I have to write another book to explain it in a different way, which is what I'm doing right now.
But that's also why, you can talk about this in a little bit, but that's why I love the subject of your new book that you're working on, because it's the stock market's booming. The stock market's at all-time highs and the economy is a mess. And there's just no correlation between the two. So I'll be anxious to talk more about that.
Yeah, can I go to just a real simple picture? Okay, this is the way I see it. You have the Fed,
Yep.
and then you have the government treasury. And if that's your picture on how money is created,
That's right. Yeah.
In very simple terms, because this is the Rich Dad Show. We want to keep it simple.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I thought was interesting was Janet Yellen was here, and today she's over here.
Oh, yes, absolutely, Robert. There is such an incestuous relationship. And now she's running the Treasury Department. So basically, like your graph shows, the Fed creates money out of nowhere. The Treasury Department borrows money from the future. The two of them collude together to allow that borrowing from the future to be subsidized by your graph right there by creating fake money and not necessarily working with the real economy to help entrepreneurs, investors, young people, etc., basically move forward, because they're really fighting against this tidal wave of fake money coming from those institutions.
Okay, so where it affects Andy Tanner is that fake money goes into the CEOs of Wall Street and they buy back their stock, which makes the stock market boom. But that money does not go to increase production. See, true money comes from production. Like if I'm a farmer and I produce cabbages, that's production. But what the Fed does against the money, and these boys in corporate America take that money, they buy back their stock, and they parachute out under capital gains, not, you know what I mean? It's a total collusion with Wall Street. Any comments on that, Andy?
Yeah, I can't imagine knocking off an armored car and coming away with trillions of dollars, but it really feels like a heist. It's incredible. Nomi, first of all, thank you for writing the book. Robert recommended it to me, and I had to Google a lot of the words you used, but I got through it. Robert says he calls me because he's a C student. I don't know why one C student would call another one, but that's what we got going. But I'm concerned, Robert, because fundamentally there's been a detachment, as you said, from earnings and production. A real estate investor like Kim will say, what's the operating income? How much is this making? And if the business is making a lot of money, then it's a box that's cranking out cash. The box is worth a lot. We're not seeing that in Wall Street in terms of what they actually earn. What has happened is the demand for stocks is fueled by the ability to buy them with money more and more and more. And right now, the poor 401k guy is paying more money for less earnings than really almost any other time in history other than the dot-com boom where no one made money. They were selling vaporware. So I'm very concerned. I think Nomi's work is critical because in school, we don't learn about central banking. We don't learn about the collusion. The simple graph the picture that Robert showed of borrowing from the future, which is really stealing from children, in my opinion. So this is what my message to people: learn as fast as you can, read Collusion, get a coach, get educated like right now. Listen, my sisters are concert pianists. They've spent years learning how to play the piano. It's like me calling them up and asking for advice. Well, you seem to know which key to hit. I've got a concert I got to do next week. Can you catch me up quick? That you don't put the seatbelt on in the middle of the wreck.
What Andy is saying, he says you got to be prepared for it if it goes up and prepare it when it comes down. And the lie they've told all the baby boomers: invest for the long term in a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs. That could be the most stupid thing you can do today. So the reason we have Andy as part of our team is he explains to people how you can make it going up, but you've also got to be prepared when it comes down.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And Andy, it's fascinating, when you break all this down. So the Fed and Powell as being the current boss of the Fed has this.
And his boss used to be Yellen.
His boss used to be Yellen, who's the head of the Treasury Department. So again, same people, same thing, same collusion, just a couple different departments. The people that make money and borrow money from the future. Can I
just jump in before you answer that, Nomi? So what does that mean if Yellen was the head of the Fed and now she's head of the Treasury? Does that blur the rules, and what happens?
Yeah, it does, because it's basically like she's really got her foot in both areas, because you can't just completely negate the fact that she's had decades basically being in the Federal Reserve System. I mean, that doesn't just go away. And now the lines are blurred because the policy is exactly the same. There's no checks and balances we hear about with respect to supposedly how the government's supposed to run. It's really just the same. It's like I pick up the phone. I'm like, hey, I'm going to issue some debt. Powell's like, all right, we're going to keep we're going to keep buying it. So don't worry about it. Hang up phone, job done. And she's been on both sides of that phone call. So it's just that idea of kind of just taking the lines away.
And that's why Nomi's book, Collusion, is a must read, because it's not just collusion in America. It's collusion all over the world.
It just goes back to the fact that this is one elaborate sort of scheme on the part of people who create fake money and use it to gain power and keep that money and that power, therefore, away from the real economy and real people.
So this is all financial education, which is why we have coaching and things like this, because there's only one place in the world where there's one answer, and that's in school, a school teacher who knows nothing about money. So Andy is my expert on stocks and bonds and mutual funds. Andy, would you bet your life on a 401k?
Oh, I don't know what else to say. Look, people, no. I don't have a 401k. Look, the cash flow quadrant makes it simple. What do you want to be? Who do you want to become? Not what do you want to have, not what do you want to do, but who do you want to become? If you want to be an E for an employee, then that's what a 401k was designed for. And so people often say, well, I want to be an investor. What should I do with my 401k? Well,
wait, let me start. This is the quadrant. 401ks are designed for these guys. IRAs are for these guys, as a general rule.
yeah.
On this side, just before we came on the program, Kim was talking about the deals we're investing in. We invest from the I quadrant. In other words, we put our own assets together. That's a true investor. Okay, so they're very different categories. So for those of you listening to this, the reason you want to stay, we offer you education, not answers. I mean, you better come up with your own damn answers, because every answer you've been given, I wouldn't trust. I wouldn't have a 401k. I wouldn't have an IRA because I don't need one. But if you don't know anything, an IRA and a 401k might be okay. Right, Andy?
Yeah, it's exactly right. Where do you want to play ball at? There's a lot of negatives that are not talked to because they're not educated about, either side. And all I hope is I can provide people and my sons with a choice they can walk into with their eyes wide open so they can choose for themselves what they want to do. I will say this, though. Professional investors do something called hedging. They have small investments that protect the large investment. Car insurance is a hedge. Home insurance is a hedge. I would just invite people to think about this. How much money have you spent on fire insurance for your home? But what do you think is more likely to burn down in the next 12 months? Your house or your 401k? And are you insured? I don't know what's going to happen, Robert. I like the idea of preparing rather than predicting. So I say it could go up, it could go down. We could have inflation, deflation. I think the least likely scenario is that it stays the same.
Because more central bank money is going into the stock market. That's just the reality. So the economy is actually deflating as we speak, even if the price of wheat or the price of oil or even the price of gold are going up, because they're just not keeping up at the same time. And that's why I agree with you so much that as an investor, as someone who's not wanting to be dependent on an employer, and we all saw how well that worked out during the pandemic for so many millions of people, you have to be nimble, you have to get educated, and you have to both move yourself forward in your investments and protect yourselves from what happens when things go south. So it's like, when you're on a boat, you're not just, going to the left or going to the right with wind, you're literally moving it forward and rocking it from side to side in the process so you can get to the shore, so you can get to where you need to go safely.
So it's more the individual instead of the overall what's happening in the world is very, very important. And also, what are you going to do about it yourself and with your family?
On the bright side of too, Andy, can you make more money when the market crashes?
Yes.
That's what I'm waiting for. I get stimulated thinking about a market crash because Kim and I get very rich during market crashes. And the Fed is terrified right now because if this bubble starts deflating, we're going to crash. And then they're going to have to do stupid things.
They will make money when the market goes down. They will make money when the market goes up, and they will make money on all the people and all the companies that are getting caught in between those moves. And as an individual, that's why we have to be doing both, and we have to be investing and learning in such a way that we can do both. I haven't had a 401k since I worked for Wall Street. When you're relying on sort of an external corporation, whether it's one you work for, as an employer, which I haven't done since then, I work for myself, or if you're working, with a 401k sort of planner, and you're not doing your own thing, you're not paying attention, you're not learning, you're not investing, you're not getting yourself to understand all the different avenues you have to make money whether certain markets, certain sectors, certain asset classes, whatever, go up or go down, and prepare yourself, because it's not that hard if you take the time to get yourself educated and if you actually do it. That you follow through.
If I could add this, okay, because it's a commercial message. We don't give financial advice. You want financial advice, call a financial planner or a stockbroker or a real estate broker or a gold and silver broker. And they'll tell you what to do. Give me your money. And the reason I'm saying this right now, I know many of you are confused, saying that, well, you say the stock market's going down, the stock market's going down, the Fed's doing this. Tell me what to do. And that's the problem with going to school. You got used to having an idiot tell you what to do. Don't listen to idiots. Start using the best asset you got is that 6 inches between your left ear and your right ear, and start to learn, because what you have here is infinite. It can learn as much as you like. But we're not here to tell you what to do. You want to invest in a 401k? Help yourself. You want to invest in gold and silver? Help yourself. We don't tell you what to do. We play the cash. We created the cash flow game, Kim and I, in 1996, which is sitting behind Kim right now, because your brain is infinite. Your brain can create its own assets. It's like over here, we create our own assets. We build our own businesses here. I don't need to be on this side here. But if you're on this side, then you have to find somebody to tell you what to do. They're called brokers. And the reason they're broker is they're broker than you. They need your money. Right, Andy?
Absolutely.
So if you just want to be told what to do, you can end right now. If you want to study and learn and become your own creator of wealth, stay tuned.
Are you worried about your financial security in these unprecedented times? If you are, the next minute could profoundly impact your financial security. Imagine waking up to find the economy has plunged and your portfolio has plummeted 30 to 45%, while banks are in turmoil, holding your money hostage while waiting for FDIC intervention. Where would you turn? For many, this may sound like fiction, but it's a stark reality for those that have money on the line. Recently, America's awoke to both the NASDAQ and the Dow, plummeting over 1,100 points each and triggering a frenzy of sell-offs. History shows us how a single event can crash the market, like the dot-com bubble of 1999, the subprime mortgage crisis of 2008, and the pandemic of 2020. But today, we're facing multiple bubbles: commercial real estate, stock, bonds, and banks. Combined with the relentless inflation, the threat of global recession, the specters of war, and you have the perfect storm. The consequences could be catastrophic, plunging us into unprecedented crisis. America is sliding in the age of discord, with trust in institutions collapsing and the democratic norms unraveling. The quality of life for Americans has declined. Wealth is concentrated among the rich, while the median American family income stagnates, creating a dangerously top-heavy social pyramid. Moreover, hostile countries like Russia, China, and Iran are working to destroy the U.S. dollar. Gold is a no-matter-what store of wealth that you need. That's why Robert has been such an advocate of gold, and he trusts Allegiance Gold. Allegiance Gold is ready to help you incorporate physical gold as part of your portfolio and protect it against economic uncertainty. Visit protectwithrobert.com today to learn how you can qualify for up to $5,000 in free silver with a qualifying investment. Or give them a call at 844-3-ROBERT. Remember to mention Robert and Kim sent you when you contact Allegiance Gold. Secure your IRA or 401k today with Allegiance Gold. Visit protectwithrobert.com or call 844-3-ROBERT.
Right, Kim?
Yes, absolutely. And I wanted to that point, I just would like to ask, because I learn best from understanding how people think, as one of the ways I learn best. So I would like to hear from Andy and from Nomi in terms of if it's a deflation or if there's inflation, how do you think about the opportunities? What are you thinking in your mind? What are you looking for? What's some guidance you can give?
What I've learned is that if you do want to invest, not to be specific on names, but in general, do it in companies or in areas that you actually see making money. And this sounds really obvious, especially Kim, Queen of Cash Flow, on this show, and all that you've done in real estate, and Andy, you with, I'm sure, dividends and everything else. It sounds so obvious to only invest in things that make money, right? Small companies are actually the backbone of America. And one of the things that has happened as a result of this pandemic is that people are creating new companies. People are creating their own mini innovations that can work with other companies in existence that are small, and cut out the red tape and cut out the middle people, and actually produce cash flow, which there are in certain infrastructure-like companies, and certain road building companies, and certain getting rid of concrete waste, which sounds so boring, but it's a thing. And it makes money because there's only a few small companies doing it, and things that actually contribute to real productive and tangible growth, and use real things to build America, to build the world. And that's where you invest. You can invest in some of those materials, in some of those companies, make your own company, innovate your own products. But that's where I see now the most value. And I think it's exciting because I think finally people are like, the pandemic showed us, if we didn't figure it out already, that we have to use our own heads, that we have to educate ourselves, we have to prepare ourselves, we have to protect ourselves, we have to grow our own wealth. And also, no one's going to do it for us.
So Andy, what kind of education would you advise people right now? Because, your forte comes from the paper side.
I would start with the cash flow game. If I were brand new and I didn't know anything about real estate or paper or anything, I wouldn't choose an asset class. I'd start with the cash flow game, and I'll tell you why that's true. Kim asked me how I think about it. And one day, Robert, you said something to me that really changed my life. I don't know if you know this, but one day you said, Andy, I don't have a right hand and a wrong hand. I have a right hand and a left. And I thought about that is, why would I think that debt is bad unless I'd been taught that? It's just debt. Why would I think a market crash is bad? I just thought that. So what the cash flow game does is help you understand something called positioning. That it really doesn't matter if a market goes up or down. It's just how am I positioned. A market crash can be a glorious, I hate to smile at that, but it can be a glorious thing. And when you have a context of up and down instead of good or bad, you can tend to position yourself in a wise way. But that takes a context shift. And I love what Robert said. I'm not here to support the culture of advice. I'm here to disrupt it. And there's a culture of education, and there's a culture of advice, and you get to choose which one you want. So I don't know if that's the answer you want. To the paper, you're right, though. You can practice on paper. And, the thing that scares me about paper, other than real estate, Robert, is there is not an asset class that has a greater amount of participation with less knowledge than the paper asset class. I mean, you're not even going to get into the deal with Kenny if you don't know what you're doing a little bit. You weren't even at the table. But you can go to Robinhood, any profession. I don't need a rant. Listen, any profession has training. A police officer, training, right? Doctor, training, lawyer, training. But I can go to Robinhood with a small amount of money with knowing nothing. Sorry, I'll calm down. But it's astounding. It's not advice, it's education.
If they're not educated, they are trying to take on the big boys in the biggest casino in the world and move on from there. You said something really interesting before about brokers, Robert, and yes, what do brokers do? They take a cut, whether the market goes up or down, good or bad, whatever, inflation, up from people's money. They don't even really get paid, most of them, on performance. They just get fees. Hedge funds, the biggest, sort of fee collectors on the planet, don't need to ever get anything right, as long as they can promise whoever gives them their money that they'll make it appreciate or make it get bigger, but not, they don't have to. If they don't, they don't. And it's ultimately up to you like the individual, like everyone watching this, to do their own homework, to get themselves educated, to gain that knowledge, rather than just jumping in head first, right? And giving your money away, rather than learning about how to make it grow for you.
So on the other side of that, Nomi, you have all these people who are now gamblers in the casino.
It's a bigger casino.
And they have other people who would just want to give their money to a financial planner, whereas assets under management and all those terms. So that they want to take no risk. And they're taking the biggest risk of all because they learn nothing.
That's right.
So Kim, have you ever lost money investing?
We have lost money investing. We've lost.
Andy, you lost money investing?
Oh, yeah.
Nomi, you lost money investing?
Of course. It's part of
It's part of the process.
That's right. That's right.
That's part of education. And
That's
that's why we have coaching and things like that. Because, like just now I went to the gym because my health is important to me, but I hire a coach. Because if I went to the gym without a coach, I'd be hanging around the water cooler. Right, Andy?
That's right.
No, that's so true. I mean, that's so true. One of the best things a coach does, because I've got my fitness coach as well, and we have coaches for all areas of our life. But the one thing that a coach does for me personally is they hold me accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Hold me accountable to do what I say I'm going to do. If I say I'm going to show up, I better show up because they're going to charge me anyway. And if I say I'm going to deliver this on time, I better deliver it on time because people are counting on me. So coaches hold me accountable, and that for me is priceless. Because it's easy for me to lie to myself, and it's easy for me to procrastinate and all of this, but a coach will hold my feet to the fire. And that to me is priceless.
And the reason I bring this up is that when we lose money, it's all absolutely the best time to learn something.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It's at the bottom of when you realize you're the village idiot, is when you're open to learn the most. And when the school teachers tell you, don't make mistakes, you're being condemned to retardation because those mistakes are priceless. They're absolutely priceless. Right, Andy?
Yes, sir. It's a big deal, and I still make them today. Warren Buffett, in his letter every year, says, here's the mistakes we made, and this is what we think. Hopefully they become few over time, but I couldn't agree more. I've lost money in the stock market, and every time I've lost it, I can go back and I can find two things. My temperament was off, my emotions got in the way, or I was dealing with something that I was outside my education level, something I didn't understand. So
well, the point is, Andy, nobody goes in, Jesus, I can't wait to lose money. Nobody says that. We all go in there to make money, and we got our butts handed to us.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations, you're about to learn something, right? And that's what a coach does. That's what a coach does. Any comments on that, Nomi?
No, and that's also what experience and education do. And I mean, if you don't lose, you can't figure out what you did wrong, and you can't learn from that. And often, just to pick up what Andy said real quick, because it's so true, your emotions, because we're people, we have emotions, and in a market, whether it's whatever kind of stock, real estate, the grocery store, whatever, there's people with emotions that are all involved, and in the markets, computers and everything else, but they're programmed by people who have emotions, and they're all sort of jumbled about and stuff. And the more you experience and learn, and the more you educate yourself, the more you can kind of, detach yourself from all of that, like turmoil, all that noise, all that emotion. So when you make a mistake, or you lose money, or you do something that you then reflect on and say, you know what, maybe I shouldn't have gone double down on that stock. Maybe I should have taken my money off the table and taken a beat, breathed a breath. The more you know, the more you educate yourself, and the more you experience, the easier it will be for you to move on to that next thing that can be the thing that makes you more money or gives you more financial peace.
The biggest losers are people who never lost. They're the people sitting on their 401ks right now. My generation, the boomer generation, they're in serious trouble right now. Because, Nomi, would you agree this house of cards is on the verge of coming down anyway?
It's not a matter of if, but when. We've seen this, we've seen this movie. We see the crash. And if that moment is when you need to take out your funds to live that part of your life, that will be very, very problematic. And so you do need to be prepared.
Yeah, the baby boomers will be the biggest losers because they've been taught not to make mistakes. And they haven't lost yet. They've had it so easy. When they came into the market in the 70s, the stock market was taking off, housing market was taking off. The US came off the gold standard in 71. So the baby boomers are going to get the biggest shellacking of all generations. It's really sad. I can see it coming. Any comments, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very difficult time culturally, right? And it really is the time to get smarter. That's all I can really say. The culture in my life is changing. A lot of the things I grew up with are now unrecognizable. I thought you made a great comment, Robert, when you said that there's a lot of money wanting to be made without actually adding value to the world and producing things. And as I look at the stock market, that's very much how I feel about it. They're not earning money. They're just getting propped up. So, what we've talked about, coaches, mentors, making mistakes, that's our culture. It's the culture of education, but it sure feels better than the culture of advice where I have to trust that someone knows what they're doing and pay them to do it.
Just wait for somebody to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And that's what schools train you to do. There's only one answer in school. It's the teacher's answer. It's the biggest mistake of all. But more important, your greatest asset is your brain and your mind. And the cash flow game is like taking your mind to the gym to exercise it. To run the options playing with play money versus real money. And so that's why I'm concerned about my generation, my own family, because Nomi, is Social Security flush with cash?
No, it's not. And it's trying to bet on things it shouldn't be betting on also.
Is Medicare flush?
No. I mean, you need to figure out a way to protect and fund your future.
The funny thing about education, Robert, that I think advice robs people of is when you settle for advice. Greed is when you want something for nothing. It's when you want a lot for a little. It's when you want to have the benefit without paying the price. Greed is wanting a lot for a little. And the thing that saddens me most about Wall Street and their advice for the fees that they collect is I think so many people miss out on the chance to be the investor they really could have become. They might have surprised themselves on who they could have been and what they could have learned, and the experience of the journey is priceless. You mentioned the mistakes, and you tell those war stories and you smile about them now, but I'm proud of those battle scars.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for the journey. I'm not perfect. I lose money from time to time, but I wouldn't trade the journey for anything. And the chance to become someone rather than listen to someone is the difference between education culture and advice culture. So I'm grateful for the Rich Dad brand story.
Nomi, in about 10 years, there's going to be a lot of stories, aren't there?
There will be, but your story will resonate, honestly, and it continues to, because it's really a foundation, of your principles and what you built, but also I think what people aspire to do and should do on their own, by putting in their own work and educating themselves.
You got to do the work.
Do the work.
And that's why we have Rich Dad World. That's why we created the cash flow game. You talk about mistakes. You get to make a lot of mistakes about money with fake money. And we always say one of the ways that, Robert, you and I have always learned is once we've got a little bit of education behind us, then we take little steps. We put a little money down on something we want to learn about because we know we're going to make mistakes. We know we might lose money, but you put a little money down and you get, all of a sudden you get really interested. So I'm just happy that we have these monthly calls. And so thank you, everybody. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Nomi. So great to have such brilliant people to hang out with.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.